On today's episode, are there too many space launch providers? Today's episode is brought to you by Engineering.com, a globally trusted source for engineering content. Check out this and many other exclusive videos for the engineering professional found only on Engineering.com TV today. Once upon a time, if you wanted to launch something into Earth orbit, you had two choices: the Soviets and NASA. Now that we're 65 years into the space age, we could ask ourselves, who doesn't launch payloads into orbit? If you look at the list of countries that have national space launch programs, it's like a who's who of the world's developed economies. America, Europe, Russia, Japan, China, South Korea, and India, each of whom not only launch payloads into space, but do so with indigenously developed rocket technology. Now we know that SpaceX, by pioneering reusability, has both the lowest costs and the most robust system, so you'd think that it would be by far cheaper for most of these nations to simply outsource their space programs to the Texas-based company. But they don't, and there are several reasons why they don't. The first is that a national space program is a significant political and propaganda achievement. Nothing signifies a nation as sophisticated as an indigenous space launch capability, and it's one of the few individual technologies that showcase the very best of engineering in a single machine. The second reason is that any launcher with the ability to lift any mass of note into low Earth orbit is effectively an intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, whether or not a nation's nuclear capable, ICBM technology not only allows force projection around the world, but it's a significant deterrent to aggression. From a defensive standpoint, it's logical for nations that can develop big rockets to do so. The third reason is that major national space programs effectively subsidize the indigenous aerospace industry, employing large numbers of engineers and developing domestic industries to support them. And the fourth, and an important reason, is that the ability to build and launch things like communications satellites gives a nation a seat at the table for major rulemaking organizations to determine the future of space-based telecommunications. If you want to carve out some bandwidth for a national project, it helps if your nation has the ability to get satellites into orbit to use that bandwidth. So there are plenty of reasons why nations want to develop domestic orbital launch capability. And most of those nations would love to defray some of the cost by selling launch services. But can they? According to Fortune Business Insights, last year, there was just over $4 billion in launch service business, and that's projected to grow to $11 billion by 2032. Now that's a lot of money, but here's an interesting statistic. Last year, the global market for underarm deodorant was just under $26 billion, and is projected to grow to $42 billion by 2032. Now, oddly, there's no extensive media coverage of the engineering challenges in developing a new deodorant roll-on or stick, even though that market is gigantic. How about cosmetics? $374 billion in 2023, growing to $758 billion by 2032. Now, I'm not saying these things are comparable, because they clearly aren't, but the simple reality is that there are too many players worldwide selling too much launch service to too few customers for them to be profitable. So the basic laws of economics suggest that there's going to be market consolidation. So who's going to win? Now, at this point, I believe the European Space Agency's launch programs are going to wind down to scientific missions for European satellites only. The Russians may disappear entirely. The Chinese will also work primarily for domestic programs, and the multiple small sat launchers will handle the small payloads. SpaceX will continue to dominate, and I suspect the United Launch Alliance will primarily serve the U.S. Department of Defense. Now, SpaceX knows how to make money launching rockets into space. Essentially, everyone else is going to require some form of government support, either directly or as a customer. In the long run, is this a sustainable way to run an industry? Well, I don't think so, and we'd better get a move on and start finding more commercial uses for space other than tourism and data services. Well, that's it for today's episode of End of the Line, brought to you by Engineering.com. For our deeper engineering series, visit Engineering.com TV for exclusive shows like Manufacturing the Future, Designing the Future, and the Engineering Roundtable, not found on our YouTube channel. The links are in the description below. Thanks for watching.